it hit me, where's my kids at?
0 being like you're stone cold sober, you can drive perfectly. 10 being you're passed out drunk. Where do you think you're at right now?
Had the seizure and probably put my foot on the accelerator and...
I'm sorry for your loss.
Emotional breakthroughs in court because of a horrific crash through a birthday party. This morning, we're sifting through the crime scene chaos ahead of trial resuming for Marshella Chidester. And hip-hop mogul Jay-Z is now suing his accuser and her lawyer, saying that they knew that they were making false claims. We're talking about the impact on Jane Doe and the lawsuits against Diddy. Plus, also this hour, a prosecutor in the OnlyFans model murder case is stepping down after facing questions from the defense team. Courtney Clenny's defense attorneys join us live. Plus, Vallow Daybell is speaking out at a brand new sit-down interview. Lori says that she and Chad will both be exonerated. She says God told her so. We're taking a look at it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? We got a great show planned for you with tremendous guests. So let's get it going right now. Grab your cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. A drunk driver on the road is like an unguided missile in the air. They strike without warning and they kill indiscriminately. Defendant Marshella Chidester was like an unguided missile in the air the day that she plowed through that birthday party. And now at trial, she's looking to evade criminal culpability for the deaths of Alana and Zane Phillips by citing her history of seizures. She says she blacked out during the crash. You know, the way I see it, my friends, that crash was the result of that woman's poor choices. She made a choice to get behind the wheel, knowing that she's susceptible to seizures. It's like playing Russian roulette. Just hope one doesn't happen during the drive or people might get killed. Her next bad choice was introducing a lot of alcohol into that game of Russian roulette. Her selfish choice to drink and drive, where again, the known risk of that is people can die. And they did. 2 children. And 15 other people were hurt because of her selfish choices. You know, how I wish there was a way to bring those beautiful babies back, but there isn't. What is reassuring is knowing that the next life choice for Marshella Chidester won't be hers to make. The next choice is for the jury to make. And based on the evidence that I've seen so far, I'm confident that choice will mean life in prison. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it right now. It's time for your daily docket.
The undercover agent, what else did you tell him?
I told him some money is supposed to be involved. She was supposed to get a lot of money if we did it. Baker told me she's loaded. She wants him gone. She's gonna get paid.
In California, we've got hitman Christopher Austin returning to the witness stand today. This is in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial that starts up at noon Eastern time. In Iowa, we've got the Visions of Violence murder trial underway. Court's going to start up in that one at 10 a.m. Eastern. And in Michigan, we've got a judge making a ruling whether to declare the missing Skelton brothers legally dead. That's going to start up at 9 a.m. Now, to our top story, heartbreaking moments Tuesday in the birthday party murder trial as the mother of the 2 children who were killed, Zane and Alana, testified. She talked about the moment she woke up in the hospital and her sister gave her the news.
She said there's been an accident, and it occurred to my brain that how I was in a building the last time I remember at a birthday party, and then I freaked out because it hit me, where's my kids at? And then that's when she told me that Jaden was, life flew to a hospital and Zane and Alana were no longer there.
Her emotional testimony caused somewhat of an unusual moment when the defense attorney began to cry on cross.
I'm sorry for your loss. I lost my son in September. He died peacefully at home. He was older. And every time I work on your case, I think you go. And I think of your children.
Ooh, so that's a touchy issue right there. So because he went on for quite some time, the prosecution lodged an objection because we can't have an attorney interjecting a personal story that may curry favor with the jury, cause the jury to be partial or impartial in the case, even though your heart breaks for that attorney losing his baby. But remember, this is at a trial, so let me bring in our guests. I have two tremendous guests standing by to give us analysis on this. I have crime scene reconstruction expert Dr. Kenny Kinsey and South Carolina solicitor Kevin Brackett. Good morning to you both. Kevin, let's start with the moment we just saw where defense counsel is bringing tears and a very personal, horrible story before the jury in the cross. And as a prosecutor, you know that the jury's watching you and you don't want to see him insensitive to his loss, which is terrible, but the rules are the rules. How do you navigate this?
Well, it is very tricky because, you know, my heart goes out to the guy. I'm sure he is suffering, and I'm sure that this case brings pain to his heart every time he has to deal with it. But he's required to ask himself before he stands up, is he capable of handling himself and comporting himself in a fashion that's professional and won't interject his own personal issues into the case? And that's what justice requires. That's what his own obligation under the rules of ethics requires. So if he thought that he was going to have difficulty, he should have really called for a break and went up and talked to the judge and just said, I need a moment because this is getting to me after listening to this mother pour her heart out. It's really caused me some trauma and I need to sit down and catch my breath. The other issue that I worry about is whether or not this is going to become an issue on appeal or on post-conviction relief after the fact. If she does get convicted, is the defendant going to come say, did I get a fair trial? Was my attorney really engaged in my defense? Well, they're so focused on the loss of their own child. You know, how did this affect my right to a fair trial? So I have concerns.
Oh, Kevin, that's such an excellent point, because on one hand, you think, oh, if anybody wins in that moment, it's the defense, right? Because the jury's going to be sympathetic to that. But you raise a great point. If she doesn't win in the end, she doesn't win the war, so to speak, then she may come back and cite that moment as problematic. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, I want to ask you about the crime scene and how you would go about analyzing this scene to figure out what in the world happened with this lady. And I want to start with some body camera footage for you, Doctor. This is the defendant being interviewed right after the crash occurred.
Do you remember what happened when you were going around here?
No, not really. I pulled into the parking lot and I thought I was driving up to the boat club, and evidently I was driving right to the pavilion.
Which direction did you drive?
I live right down the street.
Okay, so you were coming from that way?
Yes.
This way? When you got to the parking lot, what happened?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you think there's a reason you don't remember? Did something happen, or?
You know what? I have these seizures, and
Okay.
So she talks about the seizures on scene. We know her counsel raised it in opening statements. We expect them to kind of hang their hat on that as the linchpin of the defense. Her blood alcohol level, 0.18. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, walk us through, please, what you would do in getting to the root of the crash cause.
Thank you, Ms. Julie. The first thing is knowing the vehicle history, and I'm talking about immediate history before the crash. Where was this lady prior to arriving on scene? And those investigators are going to take that information back as far as they can up to the dynamics of the actual impact and then, of course, of the overhaul and the first aid to the surviving victims afterwards. The reconstruction is going to be a little bit tough, as Mr. Brackett said, because you've got to separate the emotional part from it. And fortunately enough, our lawmakers address DUI in our statutes. So that's where your investigation is going to start once you know the dynamics. And then you look at those possible medical situations. They're auxiliary at this time, but from an investigative standpoint, knowing you have a medical condition that can cause seizures is different than an unknown medical condition causing an accident. So there's going to be a level of culpability there, regardless from an investigator standpoint. And of course, you know, we'll go to our prosecutors and we'll get input. But the dynamics and the emotion, you mentioned it in your opening statement, is choices. And in this situation, you got to separate that emotion and know the path, know where that vehicle was at. And fortunately, with intelligence the way it is and technology, those investigators, it takes a little time, but you can get all that information.
Such excellent analysis. Dr. Kinsey, thank you for all of that. Really honing in now on something you said about how we've got a known condition here versus cases that you've worked that you have an unknown cause of an accident and you try to get to the why. Kevin, let me go to you to expound upon that, please. So as a prosecutor, you know this defense team is trying to get everyone on that jury to feel bad for Marshella Chidester, that she was out of control with her seizures, blacked out, not somebody who deserves to be convicted for that reason. What do you say in response to that?
Well, I'll tell you, Julie, I'm going to hear that defense and I'm going to regard it with a very skeptical eye, because it's coincidentally, she happened to be hammered out of her skull, but coincidentally, while she was driving, she had a seizure and plowed into the party. And it looked like a bomb hit that party. I mean, but for the car in the middle of the room, you might think something exploded. It was horrific. So, you know, of course, she has to come up with an alternative explanation other than her guilt. Now, you know, as a prosecutor, I'm going to delve into the medical history. I want to know how often did these seizures happen? Were they controlled with medicine? Had she been previously instructed not to drive? Were there conditions that aggravated the likelihood of a seizure? Was she aware of that? You know, so there's a lot to still, I think, come out in cross-examination and in the prosecution's case about this condition, if it exists at all, or if it is as near as serious as she wants it to believe. I think really in the final analysis, it's just going to be a Hail Mary. She's trying to find a reason why she drove her car into that party other than just being drunk. And I don't think it's going to work.
Right, Kevin. As you said, she was loaded. She was loaded. More than twice the legal limit of alcohol was in her blood system while she was driving that car so fast. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, let's look at that video. So we've got some footage from the outside showing her speeding right before the wreck, and we just saw the video inside. Her attorney made a comment about when she has seizures, it causes her foot to drop. He mentioned in opening statements that that could be the reason that she had the pedal to the metal, so to speak. This is hard to watch for anybody who's been in a car accident or hit by a speeding car. This video can be triggering, not even seeing the impact. And look at this on the inside, people running for cover. Just horrific. Like you said, Kevin, it looked like a bomb went off in there. Dr. Kinsey, how do you assess the vehicle and whether her foot was pressed down voluntarily or involuntarily, as her attorney is trying to get the jury to believe?
Ms. Julie, all that can be downloaded. Like I said, the technology in the box in the vehicle, all of that should be able to download, in addition to any cell phone information that she may have had in that vehicle. Once again, I agree with Solicitor Brackett. If the seizure situation existed, she knew about it, and then you double the fact that you're 2 times the legal limit, BAC. It's emotional, but this is not that complicated for the investigators to put together. You're dealing with 12 jurors, of course, So emotions are going to play a part, but I believe the investigators will do a great job in the end.
Right. Oh, well said, Dr. Kenny Kinsey. You know, I was saying these prosecutors are doing a great job presenting this case so precisely. And as I was watching yesterday, I was just so taken by the testimony of all of the witnesses. I was forgetting there were even lawyers asking the questions. And Kevin, as you know, that's exactly what you want to do. A good prosecutor, you know, you make your witnesses the stars of the case. I am so happy we have you both here on the show today. Kevin, you're coming along with us, and we're grateful for that. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, thank you for your time and expertise. Boy, oh boy, always a treat to have you on the program. Much love to you and your beautiful family. Take good care. Coming up next here on Opening Statements.
It cost me money. I didn't do I got this house because of you. You let Mom say some mind that. No, because of you. Flirting with like 3 girls the whole time. 3 girls.
We are spotlighting the case of OnlyFans model Courtney Clenny. Guess what? The lead prosecutor is stepping down. We've got Courtney Clenny's attorneys joining us live to talk about why. Plus, we've got Jay-Z now suing the woman who accused him of rape. But questions remain about who this Jane Doe is, and did she make up the story?
An Iowa man is found unconscious after crashing his car. He asked police to check on his girlfriend, recalling flashes of violence. Now he's on trial for her brutal murder.
The Visions of Violence murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Breaking down the week's big hearings from the most anticipated trials in our daily spotlight. Plus, a closer look at true crime cases with our voice for victims.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Jay-Z has filed a lawsuit against his rape accuser and her lawyers for malicious claims. But the accuser is standing by her story. Jay-Z's 25-page complaint points to allegations of extortion, even though the anonymous woman has withdrawn her lawsuit. She withdrew it last month. The woman, you may recall, accused both Jay-Z and Diddy of sexually assaulting her when she was just 13 years old. Jane Doe spoke to NBC News about her accusations.
I'm scared of what could happen, but I'm more afraid of letting it eat me alive from the inside out. I haven't asked for a dime from him. It's not everything is motivated by money, and I'm sorry that he feels that it is.
In his complaint, Jay-Z says his accuser, along with her attorneys, quote, were soullessly motivated by greed, in abject disregard of the truth and the most fundamental precepts of human decency. Whoa. The complaint goes on to say the hip-hop mogul wishes to hold Doe accountable for her malicious prosecution of knowingly false allegations. Now, Jay-Z's complaint referenced his accuser as Jane Doe over 30 times. Now, we're asking, what questions do you have for Jane Doe? We still don't know who this woman is. Remember, she petitioned the court, and the court agreed she could keep her identity anonymous. What would you ask her if you had a chance to talk to Jane Doe? Let's bring in our power panel. Still with me, South Carolina solicitor Kevin Brackett. I want to welcome in the former co-host of the Hot 97 morning show, Lisa G, is here, and media personality and artist in his own right, Head Crack, is here as well. Great to see you all. Okay, ladies first. Lisa G, would you start off our conversation? What do you think about all of this, please?
Well, Jay-Z made it very clear that he was very upset about this and that it really affected his family and that he had kids that he had to discuss this with. And so it just sounds like he's coming down very hard and just showing her how angry he really was that this happened in the first place, that she filed a lawsuit. There were a lot of holes in her stories, and Jay-Z isn't going to stand for it. And Julie, he has a lot of money. So is she being intimidated? That's the big question.
Right, Lisa G, exactly. Great points. Head Crack, let me go to you next, please. What do you think as you're hearing this back and forth? And this is something, I remember we talked about initially when it came out, it was stunning, and then more comes out and more comes out. And Jay-Z, boy, he is holding their feet to the fire.
He was very vehement, like when the accusations first came about that, hey, listen, this is ridiculous and I'm gonna make y'all look ridiculous at the end of the day. And here we are, you know what I'm saying? Like a couple months later, and everything seemed real sketchy about her story to begin with. Her father couldn't corroborate the story. What is a 13-year-old doing at a VMA's after party? Nothing added up. And what people sometimes fail to realize is when you make accusations, right, even if the accusations turn out to be not true, that stain remains for a long time. It's like getting oil on your clothing. You can wash it out, but there's gonna be remnants up there and people are gonna think about, you remember that one time that person had that accusation? You know, so at the end of the day, he has to make an example of this person, so maybe it'll stop other people from coming through bearing false witness in the future.
Yeah, great point, Head Crack. You know, and what's the ramifications? What are the ramifications of this? We're gonna touch on that. I'm so glad you brought it up. In our next question for you all, Kevin Brackett, let me get your initial thoughts on the back and forth and this Jane Doe accuser. And if you could sit down with her, what might you want to ask her, Kevin?
Well, I mean, it sounds like a lot of questions have already been asked of her, and that's how her story started to unravel. You know, the devil's in the details in a 20-something-year-old case, because there's probably no forensic evidence that she's going to be able to provide that anything ever happened. So, you know, you're going to have to ask all the details. Who was there? Where was this? When did this take place? A lot of little small details which you can verify or not. And if you can't verify them, people you say were there were not even in New York, for example. That's the kind of problem that, you know, unwinds a case like this. And listen, this is a tragedy, really. It's horrible. It's horrible to be a victim of sexual assault. I've worked with many of them over the years, and it's a tragic occurrence in anyone's life. It is also horrible to be falsely accused of a sexual assault. That is, as the gentleman commented a moment ago, that's something that just lingers over you and you can't ever erase it. The reality of it is, for Jay-Z, is that even if he's successful in his civil suit, what is he going to get from this woman? She probably has nothing. So it's not as if, you know, this is going to ruin her, because she probably doesn't have much to begin with. So it's terrible. You know, you hate for any sexual assault victim to have, you know, have their case taken not seriously because they think back to this woman. So it's just the ripple effects of an accusation that doesn't carry water are just terrible for everybody involved, including other victims in other cases unrelated.
Right. Great points. You all are making such great points. And let's dovetail off of that, Kevin, what you just mentioned. So we know that this lawyer, Tony Busby, who filed this suit on behalf of this alleged victim, Jane Doe, he's filed many other suits. He's made some strong claims. So let's go back to his initial press conference. Take a look.
The biggest secret in the entertainment industry that really wasn't a secret at all has finally been revealed to the world. The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward.
Okay, notice that he's got his phone number behind him as he's doing this press conference. It seems like this Texas lawyer has all these accusers flocking to him. It's fair to ask questions, right? Why this guy? Why now? Why so many? So let's talk about what impact is this, you know, what do we call it, a mess, you know, this suit brought against Jay-Z, now dropped. He's suing them for what he says are false claims. How's this all going to impact the cases against Diddy? If there is something with merit, and again, we don't know. He's cloaked in the presumption of innocence as we get ready for that criminal trial happening, but the civil suits swirling around it certainly are making a difference here in the court of public opinion. Lisa G., let me go back to you.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting, Julie, because in hip hop, there are rumors about personalities throughout the years. There have been rumors about Jay-Z, none of which have come true. But when I hear this, it just seems like he's angrier at the attorney than the accuser. Wouldn't you agree? That's what it sounds like to me, that he's trying to make a point.
Oh, yeah. I think he can't stand this attorney. I think Jay-Z loathes Tony Busby. You know, and look, if I was in Jay-Z's position and if I was falsely accused, I would too, right? If Jay-Z firmly believes that this guy has pushed forward false claims for a payday. Headcrack, let me go to you next. You touched on it in your first set of comments. What do you think the impact's going to be? Does this kind of make everybody want to question all the other suits this guy's filed?
I mean, I think as it relates to Diddy's case, if this trial was like a game of Uno, there are enough people holding draw fours to paint the picture that they want to paint of Diddy already. Like, you know, like this, even if 27 people made an accusation, and even if 4 of them actually turned out to be true, there's some merit here, you know, to go off on. And this guy has a lot of accusers to bob, weave, and fight against. Are all of them telling the truth? Time will reveal. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, if someone comes out and says that they're a victim, we do have to hear them out. But then when we hear them out, we find out that their stories have all types of holes in it, a mesh amount of holes, then all of a sudden, like, this does add a little bit of discredit to everybody else who might speak out. But you do have to hear everybody's story just in case someone is telling the truth.
It was so well said, Headcrack. Exactly. You know, you trust, you then verify, right? You're open to the story, and then the verification, the vetting process happens. Kevin Brackett, you know this all too well. You know, your office has its doors open for victims always, and then you verify the claims. I'm curious your thoughts as an attorney. What do you think happens with Tony Busby? You know, with this now big question mark over his head from the Jay-Z incident, do you think suddenly we're going to see pushback from all the other suits?
I don't know about that. Each case stands on its own, and the Diddy case seems to have a lot more circulating around it. You know, the thing that strikes me about Jay-Z's case is that prior to the filing of the suit, I'll bet you that there was probably an effort to reach out to see if he wanted to do a quiet settlement, like a demand letter or something like that. And I'm betting he said no. I've been involved in cases involving famous personalities who've come through my jurisdiction who were accused of something very similar, who did settle. And I didn't. I had my doubts about the accuser, but I recognize that they have to make this choice. Do I want this tarnish to my reputation, or should I settle for what they consider to be a relatively trivial amount of money? The fact that Jay-Z stood his ground and said, no, I'm not going to pay you a nickel, and then waited all the way through the lawsuit and ultimately having it withdrawn, shows that he was very determined to stand up for himself, and I respect that. But I think the two cases stand on their own, and the fact that Diddy's is a criminal case and that a prosecutor has evaluated it and tried to poke holes in it and check for these inconsistencies, and still believes to this day that they can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a much higher standard than they have to have in civil court, preponderance, leads me to conclude that there's probably more than just smoke in the Diddy case.
Oh, that's great. Perfect note to end on. I know we're going to be talking much more about the Diddy cases. We're getting ready. May, it's set to go this May. And of course, we want to have you all back when we get ready for that one. Lisa G and Headcrack, we have to say goodbye to both of you. Thank you so much for making time for us, taking time out of your schedules to come on the program. We really appreciate it. And check out Headcrack's album, Microdose, out now. Thank you both. We'll see you soon. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, did you hear that the lead prosecutor on Courtney Clenny's case is stepping down? Her attorneys are joining us live to explain why. Plus, counselor cult mom believes she'll be set free. We're breaking down her brand new sit down. Yeah, that's right. I said sit down interview. Stay with us.
Retrial today.
I can't feel my arm. What, ma'am? But my boyfriend is dying of a stab. Ma'am.
Like I said, a little bit slur. He ended up pinning me against the wall. He had my neck, and this happened twice before, where I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my knife and I said, "Don't come anywhere closer to me." I had absolutely no intention of using it. It's coming at me, and I threw it.
This morning, returning the spotlight on the future trial of OnlyFans model Courtney Clenny. As guess what? The lead prosecutor has stepped down. Clenny is accused of stabbing her boyfriend Christian Abumseli to death in their Miami condo back in 2022. Last month, the judge granted the defense team's motion to depose that lead prosecutor who just stepped down. His name is Khalil Quinnen. Now, this is over text messages and emails that he obtained that the court ruled he shouldn't have looked at. They were covered by attorney-client privilege. Here's Quinnen in court.
We were okay with the records being sealed, hence why it was called unopposed, for the purposes of just getting this over with. And then however the court rules is however the court rules, and whatever's appropriate to be protected is protected, and whatever's not, that's perfectly fine. And the pleadings could be redacted and so on. But that I had to file a pleading by last week, Friday, in response, necessarily undercut the defendant's premise of their motion.
Now, Quinnen says he was left with no choice but to withdraw if he's going to be deposed, because he would then become a witness in his own case, and that's a huge no-no. Wow. Let's get some reaction from this from the defense attorneys who fought so hard to uncover what had happened with these prosecutors going into the text message thread, the Team Courtney text message thread that was private. Sabrina Puglisi and Frank Prieto on the program. Good morning to you both and welcome back. So let's start with the deposition of this guy. Sabrina, what's going to happen next, please?
Well, we are waiting to be able to do this deposition. The judge has asked us to propose questions to the state, so they'll be prepared as to what exactly we're going to ask. They have the opportunity to then look at those questions, make their objections. The judge is going to sit in on the deposition, and she'll be able to make rulings right there on the spot as we're asking these questions. So it's going to be interesting. I know in my 25 years, I've never had something like this happen.
Sure. And will we get to see it, Sabrina? Would this be something where we can have our cameras in there?
No, I'm going to say that the judge will not allow the cameras, and whether the deposition will actually be sealed once it is taken instead of actually filed, which normally happens in any public case, that remains to be seen. It will be up to the judge.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that. Frank, let me turn to you on something we talked about last time you both were on. You've been pushing for that whole team to be disqualified because of this incident and going through those private messages that you and Sabrina had with Courtney and her mom and dad. We've got one prosecutor stepping down. Is that enough for you, or are you still pushing for the whole team to be DQ'd?
You know, at this stage, we're still pushing for the entire office, not just the team, the office to be taken off of the case. As you indicated earlier with Sabrina, you know, the deposition of this prosecutor who ran amok on this case is going to be kind of quintessential in figuring out how deep the penetration into our defense camp the prosecutors went. You know, who he spoke to, what other members of the team did he produced these privileged documents to for them to review. So his deposition is really going to help in the breadth and depth of that intrusion. So, you know, I think that his deposition is going to help get the entire office off the case. And quite honestly, that office, who I used to work for, if they wanted to do the right thing, they should all get off the case now.
Oh, wow. And that's interesting. So before you entered the private sector doing criminal defense work, you served as a prosecutor in that Miami-Dade office, Frank?
I did, and it was a wonderful 4 years of experience. Kathleen Hogue, who's part of the prosecution team, was my supervisor. And quite honestly, I don't think something like this would have happened 25 years ago when I was with the office.
And appreciate that in the background. And so I'm curious, in terms of getting the whole office, you know, conflicted off of this case, have you taken any steps to reach out to the Attorney General's office, Frank?
We have not. You know, at this stage, a lot of this is going to fall into it's Judge Cruz's case, and she's going to have to make these difficult decisions of who she's taking off the case, if anyone, and then, you know, once she makes her ruling, hopefully it will result in certain members, if not the whole office, being taken off, and then the governor will have to appoint a conflict office to come in and have a new prosecution team assigned.
Appreciate that. Sabrina, let me go to you, please, on what everybody wants to know, when this case is going to trial. Last time we talked, still wasn't a trial date. Is there one this morning?
No, there's not. And that's the real shame of all of this, right? Is that Courtney has been sitting in jail for 2.5 years. For the last 1 year since last January, this breach came up, that laptop case, which was eventually dismissed. All of this has been going on, us trying to get these prosecutors off the case. And Courtney's the one who's sitting in jail suffering while this is going on because she's innocent and she wants her trial. And to answer your question, unfortunately, no, we still do not have a court date.
Wow. Sabrina, thank you for that. And, you know, we always like to ask, how is Courtney doing in jail? How is she doing all this time? Any improvements physically, mentally, anything you can share with us? Any way, good or bad?
You know, I'll tell you that she's very strong-minded. She's been exercising again more, and that helps to take her mind off this. But all these constant delays are taking a toll on her mentally. You know, she just wants to be able to have her trial, and she constantly asks me, is there a date yet? Is there a date yet? And I keep having to say no, and we have to wait for all these delays, and it is taking a toll on her, I have to say.
Appreciate you both coming on and keeping us apprised of everything. Boy, I know this has been quite a fight and taken up a lot more time than it should have for you both. But what great advocacy you've done on this case. And Courtney is very, very fortunate to have you both. Sabrina Puglisi, Frank Prieto, thank you for speaking with me today. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Julie.
Take care. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, we've got counselor cult mom speaking out in a brand new interview ahead of her upcoming trial. Just wait till you see this.
The acid test of this prosecution is not a matter of determining if the defendant is guilty of the crimes that the defendant is charged, but rather, was any crime even committed? And where is this evidence?
An Iowa man is found unconscious after crashing his car. He asked police to check on his girlfriend, recalling flashes of violence. Now he's on trial for her brutal murder.
The Visions of Violence murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
This stuff about playing a race card is preposterous. The racial division was so great that people saw the facts differently.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
We just moved in here.
Gotcha. How long have you guys lived here?
I'm sorry?
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi, neighbor, sorry.
Now for what's tipping the scales in the case against cult mom, Lori Vallow Daybell. Guess what? She has sat down with NBC Dateline's Keith Morrison for her first one-on-one interview. Lori speaking out about her innocence while currently standing trial for her ex-husband's murder. Here's a preview.
How could you possibly think that Chad would be exonerated after what happened?
The same way I will be exonerated. We will both be exonerated in the future.
Because?
I have seen things in the future that Jesus showed me when I was in heaven.
Uh-huh.
And we were not in jail. And we were not in prison. And they were still in the future.
Oh, my. So will this interview tip the scales of justice ahead of her trial? Remember, she's got a trial date of March 31st. And that is when they're going to start picking that jury. And remember, she's representing herself in that case. Let's bring in our guest analyst, South Carolina solicitor Kevin Brackett, on the program this morning. Oh, Kevin, what do you think? We got a pro se defendant here. It's a homicide case, as serious as it gets. As you know, she's already been convicted of doing 3 murders. And now she thinks it's a good idea to do a sit-down interview with Keith Morrison. Your reaction?
Well, what has she got to lose, Julie? I mean, she's doing life. So why not just go out with a bang? You know, I'll say this, as a prosecutor, Some of the most painful cases I've had to prosecute were against pro se defendants because they don't know the rules of evidence. They don't know the rules of procedure. They just stand up and do whatever they want. It's very frustrating as a prosecutor to see them doing things that you know they're not allowed to do. And really, there's not much that anybody can do about it. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, the best war stories I have are from pro se cases. So that hopefully is some comfort to the prosecutors. They're probably going to walk out of this trial with a bunch of war stories. If they have a strong case, it doesn't matter what she does. It's really not going to matter. Jurors will see her for what she is. I wonder if the judge is appointing a standby counsel, though, in case she really starts to go off the rails.
Yes.
You know, defendants can be removed from court by the judge if they start really misbehaving. The sanctity of the proceedings is paramount, and they can actually remove the defendant from the courtroom. But in a pro se case, that's pretty tough if there's nobody in there for them. So I don't know whether there's standby counsel. That would be something I'd be concerned about if I was the prosecutor, just so that if that did happen, at least somebody's in the courtroom to make objections and look out.
There is standby counsel on her case, so we do know that. Fortunately, as you pointed out, Kevin, right? Boy, oh boy, she's something else. I mean, she really thinks she's equipped to try this case. I have a clip for you, Kevin, on one of her recent hearings where she talks about studying the law.
Can you just tell me a little bit why you want to represent yourself?
Yes, Your Honor, for the past 5 years that I've been incarcerated, I have taken upon myself to study case law and criminal rules of procedure in the state of Idaho and Arizona, as well as federally. Prior to that, for the last 10 years, prior to my incarceration, I did study procedure in family law, and I have real trial experience. I have participated in 3 different full trials from beginning to end.
Oh, somebody give her a bar card, huh, Kevin? Yeah. She's ready to go, isn't she? What do you think?
Yeah, you know, a lot of lawyers spend 3 years in law school studying it, but I don't trust them to handle a murder case straight out of law school. You know, you're going to start with some DUIs and kind of work your way up from there. This isn't going to be a situation where you're walking in trying a murder case out the gate. And again, I don't think she'll follow the rules because she doesn't really have to. And what's the judge going to do? Hold her in contempt? I mean, she's already doing life. So what, you know, there's really no rails up on this thing. And of course, she's already convinced she's going to be acquitted because she's seen it in a vision. But I saw your clip earlier, Julie, and I would refer the lady to the book of Romans, which says, "Beware the magistrate, for he does not bear the sword in vain."
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, Kevin. Yeah, hopefully she's reading that piece of scripture there. My goodness, I'm having visions of her staying in prison forever. You know, this woman, she's so lucky. She's so lucky she didn't get the death penalty in Idaho. I mean, really, and that was as you know, Kevin, that was a screw up with those prosecutors and their handling of it, and the judge giving them a slap on the wrist and sanctioning them essentially. And she's lucky. She's lucky it's life. Do you think she's going to testify? Do you think we'll see her in this trial get up there?
She probably will, because, I mean, she's already testified to Dateline in some respects, and I don't know whether the state will get a copy of that to cross-examine her with if she gave an accounting of what took place. But, you know, having every prior statement she's made, I think they're entitled to use that to question her and see whether there's any inconsistencies. But I don't see why she wouldn't testify. Mm-hmm. Of course, she'll probably be testifying throughout the entire trial through her questions and comments that she makes while she's standing up on cross-examination. So, you know, maybe she feel like she got it all out through her questions, but who knows?
Right. Yeah, we know she loves to be the center of attention, that's for sure. And we're not forgetting about Charles Vallow, the victim on this case, a wonderful husband that she had. He's got a wonderful family. Everybody hoping and praying for justice for him. Again, March 31st is the date. And Kevin Brackett, we're going to look forward to more analysis with you as that big day approaches. Thank you for making time for us today. It's been such a treat having you on. Take good care.
My pleasure.
And that's all for this episode of Opening Statements.